Steve, for the very eloquent speech on the economics of mutuality. I'm glad I'm coming between Steve, who has laid the foundation, right, the core ideas, and then Timothy, who is an EOM expert. So I'm not really an expert in EOM per se, but I've spent some time with the Catalyst, group from Mars when they were in Singapore, Bruno and Jay, and also Mr. Lim. He hosted a lunch and subsequent, conversations about the economics of mutuality, the core ideas. And I was really quite captivated by that, right? Because as a Christian, when I read the Bible, I looked at, the Jubilee economics. I looked at, what Christ said about, bringing his parables for the marketplace and so on. So I've always, as a Christian, wanted very much to be able to bring ideas that I read in the Bible, right, what God's word says, into the marketplace. It is not easy, right? There are a lot of ideas, frameworks, models that are out there, and really as we experiment and try ideas, we don't know what really works. But EOM provides a very good framework, which I will explain later, right? Why it is an opportunity for us to take a deeper look into this framework that is quite holistic in terms of considering different forms of capital in the way we manage our business, right, or work or area of work that you have been given responsibility for. So for me, I do not run a business, but in GIC, my role was an economist in the asset allocation group. And my key mandate is to look at long-term trends at that time, right? When I started this work was long-term trends and how it affects the investment portfolio. So there is it's only part of, the organization activity that I'm responsible for. But even though you are not the chief executive that can make big changes, or the business owner, right? Whatever responsibility that God has given us, I think we need to take it upon ourselves to ask, like what Steve said, the right set of questions, right? What is it that we need to do that aligns with our faith? Maybe I'll just also, now, what I wanted to do in my sharing is really spend some time to talk about the sustainability movement, how I got into it, and why it is actually an opportunity for all of us to think about integrating our faith into the marketplace. And also some of the key trends. Why is it so important and pertinent if you are running your business today, especially if you are looking at long term, right? Like what Steve has mentioned. Then in the second part of my sharing, I just want to share my testimony, right? My journey, right? What happened, and perhaps some snippets of it could be an encouragement to all of you. So sustainability or ESG, I think, really means a consideration of relevant factors, be it environmental, social, human capital, or governance. These are important broad factor groups that is beyond financial factors, right, that would affect the viability and profitability of businesses that we run or any activities that we have in our different organizations. It is relevant for evaluating really long-term sustainability. And I have in my notes the same point that Steve was making. If you only care about making the most amount of money within this quarter or this year in the short term, what you do is you cut a lot of costs, you sell as many units of things that you are producing as much as possible. You don't think about the consequences of overconsumption. You don't think about the consequences of overworking your colleagues, right, or your team, or the people who work for you. You will just make them do overtime, sell as much as possible, and so on. The long-term consequences of those decisions are not being considered if you only think for the short term. But if you really want long-term longevity, long-term sustainability, you want to do business for 100 years, right? That long-term perspective makes you think, okay, if I overwork them today, right, they are working, 7 days a week, right, and hardly have much sleep, they're going to break down, right? Mental issues, burnout and things like that, right, would matter to you if you are thinking about the long term, right? How you attract and retain talent over the long term, and also you are thinking about the social license to operate when there's a crisis, when there's change in politics. Are you still a business that can withstand all kinds of disruption that societal changes may impose upon you? So I think sustainability is really thinking long term, right? Because I'm in GIC, so it's ingrained in us. We need to think long term. So when you're thinking long term, sustainability, considering different broad factors beyond financial factors matters. And sustainability, the belief is that companies with better sustainability practices would deliver better performance in the long term. And we can also see that the relationship between sustainability and profitability is strengthening over time. And I will just share a few, convergence of a few key market developments. Many of you may already know, but I just want to kind of summarize the trends that I see. Is the nature of my training, right? As an economist, speaking to senior management, why is it important to take note of it now, right? And why is it growing in importance? So basically, I will organize my thoughts on the mega trends into the 5 C's. First is really consumer preferences, right? Consumers increasingly align their purchasing decision with their values. So values of a company become part of the value for money proposition that consumers are thinking about. If you have a strong core purpose, you have strong sustainability practices, usually it engenders stronger brand loyalty. It helps you become more competitive in the marketplace. Right, there are many examples of that. Right, like one example, my favorite outdoor clothing company, Patagonia. There's very strong brand loyalty because they care about environment and the impact they have on society more than their bottom line. They're willing to repair your clothing instead of making you discard the old clothing and buy new ones. Right. And for a lot of companies, especially SMEs, your clients, your key clients are the large corporates. Today, a lot of MNCs, international companies, they have sustainability policies, and they audit their supply chain for sustainability practices. If you're not aware of what's happening really at the in this large company and corporate sector globally, you might not be prepared, right, and be having the right set of practices in your company and when the audit comes and you're not prepared, you could lose some of your major key accounts. The second C is really compliance and regulations, right? That government policies are already causing externalities like carbon emissions to be priced in. There are increasing reporting requirements on ESG. There are taxonomies, both on green and social, that define what is good, what is green, and what is socially acceptable, and what is not. Those that are not in the taxonomy you could face risk, right, of greater regulation and less, social license for operations. And there are also carbon taxes and carbon pricing that has been spreading. So if your business model has more carbon emissions, you're going to incur higher costs than your competitors. 20 years ago, less than 2% of global emissions have a carbon tax. Today, nearly 1/4, and that coverage of carbon taxes are also increasing. And there are also subsidies, right, for green technologies and so on. So the government policies is coming in, right, to level set what is good for the environment, for natural capital, and what's good for social and human capital versus what's not. So that's quite important for businesses to pay attention. And third, really, is cost of capital. Investors are looking for sustainable businesses to invest in, to deploy their money in. Many asset managers, investors, they now have sustainability functions, right? GIC just set one up last year, and they're engaging with companies asking about their sustainability practices. So it is important, whether you like it or not, as something you need to consider in your business if you want to attract your investments. And the fourth C is really the cost and culture of the company. It's true that some sustainability practices may incur more costs, right? You have to think hard. It's more complex, and you need more skills. You got to think about managing the labor supply, health and safety. You need to, maybe incur some cost for reporting and so on. I mean, I'm sure this is always, I've heard, right, from many businesses, right, the cost of implementing and integrating sustainability or economics of mutuality for that matter, right, could be very high, right? But there are also cost savings, right? If you think hard about it, if you ask the right questions and you think hard about it, there could be cost savings from being more sustainable in your business practices. Energy efficiency savings, waste management, recycling. There could be innovative ideas out there that can actually help you in managing your costs over the long term. And also, finally, is really culture, right? The culture of the company, how is quite important today, as I said earlier, in attracting and hiring and then retaining the talent in your workforce. Because a lot of people, I wouldn't say young, but especially the young, but all of us really do want to choose to work for companies that has a strong sense of purpose, right, and aligns with their values. So these factors, right, are attracting talent, managing costs, right, dealing with regulations, trying to win market share. All these are quite important for you to build a business, right, and for your organization to be able to be competitive, right, and in the marketplace. So I would say that given all these trends, and they are all accelerating, I would say they are growing in importance compared to 5-6 years ago when I first started the research work. Really, they are growing in importance. And I would say ESG, the ESG movement, right, I would encourage all of us to look at it as an open door, right, to really ask the hard question. Because 5 years ago, if you talk about climate change, you talk about ESG, your management will probably think that you are really not focusing on your core work. But today it is so important to all the businesses. So you have a chance, you have an open door to ask, what does ESG and sustainability mean for my company, my organization? Right? How do I bring relevant factors beyond just the short-term, chasing after short-term profits for your organization? So don't treat it as a box-ticking exercise, because some of us have to report, right? Some companies have to report, submit this report, answer investor questions, and so on and so forth. Treat those as opportunities to really ask, is it relevant? What value add can I bring? How can I use this opportunity to transform the business model? How can I use this opportunity, right, to convince my management or my colleagues to do things differently? Yeah. So now I want to talk about really my own journey, right? And my focus of research has been on climate change. So it's really about the natural capital part of the economics of mutuality. The economics of mutuality is really a very great framework to think quite holistically about sustainability. But for me, I deep dived into climate change. And how did it all start, right? It's as a Christian, right, when I got the topic on looking at climate change amongst many other topics, it is one of those that are not mainstream and center of people's mind, right? But as a Christian, I would pray for my work, right, regularly for all kinds of things in the workplace. And this was one of the things that I was praying to the Lord about, right? What do you want me to do about this, right? And then the word that came to my heart was that, we are called to be stewards of the earth, right? Adam and Eve was given a mandate to take care of the planet. So to me, okay, climate and environment is really important to the Lord, right? We shouldn't ignore it. I shouldn't ignore it just because the industry is not paying attention to it. So then that started, the journey of asking the different difficult questions. I think when I was in the early stage of the journey, it was a time I met Bruno and Jay and the economics of mutuality. It was in Cornerstone Church, and they were talking about their own journey and how it was difficult, right? Asking the difficult questions and doing things very differently, and pioneering some of these ideas was difficult. That inspired me a lot to say, okay, this is actually how it works. you know that something is important, it is not mainstream, how do I actually make it work in the marketplace? It is hard work, it is complex. But what they have done gave me a lot of encouragement to try to go on this path. So when the difficult question, right, as an investor, what I had to ask was, why does it matter? Right? How does it affect investments? So the question to ask is, what are the risks? What are the opportunities? What is the transmission mechanism from climate change to the investment portfolio that we have today? Is it about the polar bears? If it's about the polar bears, it doesn't matter. So it's really hard-nosed look at your core business and thinking about how it actually impacts the investment portfolio. So those were the questions I asked and talked very broadly with experts that are not in the industry, and to try to find sensible questions to it. So as Steve was talking about economy, right, the lesser economy and the greater economy is the reality, right, the reality economy. When we ask the right questions, the lesser economy may not have all the answers that you were seeking, right, the economics textbook and so on and so forth. So it's really about, is this real? Is this something that is real that will affect your business, right? No matter what other people say. So when the conversation on climate change started in the industry, people were saying, like, do you believe in climate change? The question people ask is that, when I start talking about climate change, that you believe in climate change, but I don't believe in climate change. That is a strange kind of conversation, because it's all about religion, but this is not religion, right? So marketplace, integrating faith into the marketplace is, I think, not religion. It's not about belief. It's about the reality that God has created. What is the truth? What are the rules? What are the laws that God has already kind of designed into how the world works, right? And how people work. So that struck me, when the conversation was about religion. I just felt like, no, in me, I just felt like, no, that there's something more to it. It's not about religion, it's not about belief, it's about whether climate change and the harm we did to the environment, is it real or not real, right? And that started the whole research process. Looking at the science, looking at the hard facts, looking at the data, it is real. Looking at the data and the impact on companies, the impact is significant, right? So I did a lot of those research, and those were days when nobody was paying attention again. Sometimes you would feel you're alone, nobody is recognizing your work, you feel like you are being buried. But one saying, really encouraged me those days was, those who, or things or people who try to bury your ideas didn't know that you were a seed. Right? It's okay to be buried. In due time, God will cause it to grow, right? And because if you're operating in the reality economy, the reality will become the reality. So hang on. I mean, my sharing on this is really to encourage us to kind of hang on, ask the difficult question, focus on the reality economy, and really walk, in step with the Lord, with His word, and integrate it into your day-to-day work.